Let's talk about why EV sales are stalling. At least that's what the media would have you believe. The great EV winnowing that I've been warning about for a while is coming to the EV industry. Many of the companies that we know and love are going to go out of business or be sold to rivals for pennies on the dollar. Now, this is not a prediction of doom and gloom for EVs or a pronouncement that the EV revolution is dead. In fact, more people than ever are choosing electric vehicles in 2023, according to vehicle sales data from Cox Automotive. Mainstream media and EV haters, however, would have you believe that demand has dropped off the cliff for any number of reasons, and on the most recent Tesla earnings call, Elon Musk blamed everything on interest rates. EV demand really hasn't dropped in absolute terms, but Mr. Musk is partially correct. Yes, higher interest rates have increased the costs of everything that Americans purchase on credit, but an EV is not a house, and the monthly payments are a lot less sensitive to interest rate changes due to the lower purchase price of a car and the length of the loan term. Higher interest rates are only part of the reason. EV demand is simply changing, and the electric vehicle market is going into a transition period. If you like this kind of analysis, please help my channel out by hitting the like button and subscribing. If you want to support my work directly and my access to premium news sources, please check out my Patreon link in the description below. Early adopters willing to pay a huge premium for something novel have largely already bought into EVs. Making the case for going electric to that group of customers has largely been accomplished, and the struggle now is to earn the market share of the general public. More than half of consumers are considering buying a new or used battery electric vehicle within the next year, according to that Cox Automotive survey released in June of 2023. Just 38% of customers said the same in 2021. Despite this, we have seen the growth and demand for Tesla products slow their rate of acceleration. There are many reasons why this could be occurring that have nothing to do with company mismanagement. Brand fatigue, despite the lack of advertising, is likely a factor. A vast majority of EVs you see on the road are already Teslas. Tesla has been slow to introduce new models and actually has a relatively small vehicle lineup that really fails to address the needs of a large part of the market. That may change when deliveries of Cybertruck begin, but I actually anticipate lots of problems ramping up production of the Cybertruck, and for the most ridiculous reason. Humans really don't appreciate bad geometry. I'm not talking about bad geometry in the design of the Cybertruck, which I think will appeal to a lot of people and turn some people off. I'm talking about the assembly precision that Tesla is going to need to make all of those straight seams and flat panels align correctly. If any of them are slightly off, it's going to throw off the entire perception of the finished product. In a recent email leak published by Cybertruck Owners Club, Musk requested tolerance below 10 microns for all parts used in the vehicle's final assembly. That's equivalent to 1/100th of a millimeter. That is a relatively tall manufacturing order, and it doesn't even address variability concerns in final assembly. Hiding assembly imperfections is a lot easier with curved surfaces and seams because of how all human beings observe and appreciate geometric form. This isn't going to be like the days of early adopters when enthusiastic buyers were just happy to drive a car that didn't need gasoline and weren't concerned with fit and finish that wasn't perfect. The reason this is concerning, where it hasn't been in the past, is competition. Brand fatigue can now be easily handled by purchasing from a Tesla competitor. Tesla not only has competition in the EV space, but Tesla and their competitors are now going after a market that is driven by very different concerns than early adopters. They are primarily driven by economics and the availability of public EV charging infrastructure. They are less driven by the desire to minimize impact on the environment and more driven by the bottom line. How much cheaper will it be than a gas guzzler, and will I get stranded on the side of the road? Every car company that sells EVs is trying to address these concerns and asking themselves, how do we start to increase sales, and how do we convert people considering EVs into buyers? Cox Automotive now predicts that sales of fully electric vehicles in the U.S. will break the 1 million vehicle barrier in 2023 for the first time ever, which is no decline in demand at all. More than 557,000 battery electric vehicles have already been sold this year through the end of second quarter. This has been driven, despite the increased cost to borrow money, by a number of compounding factors such as price cuts, a wider availability of vehicles, and more government subsidies. The Inflation Reduction Act is driving some of this sales growth based on how subsidies were engineered, and it's spurring the creation of new vehicle models. The federal government began offering tax credits up to $7,500 on EVs at the beginning of the year, partially based on where the cars and their components were sourced and assembled. But only 18 EV models out of the 97 on the market currently qualify for this tax credit. Since cost is one of the major factors that limits the tax credit, you can safely bet that new, less expensive EV cars that qualify for the tax credit are coming. Price is the biggest barrier for consumers. According to that Cox Automotive survey that I mentioned earlier, despite sharp price cuts by Tesla and Ford this year, you will still pay a premium over the average gas-powered model. The average electric vehicle price in July was $53,469 according to Kelley Blue Book, versus an average price of $48,334 across all vehicles. Of course, this doesn't tell the whole story. When you throw out the outliers and non-comparables, though, it looks like the real price premium for an EV over the same class gas vehicle is about 18%, which is a lot harder to swallow. In Cox's customer survey, the second biggest concern for EV considerers after the price was a lack of access to charging stations. So far, that charging anxiety has prevented many people from buying an electric vehicle and has always seemed a bit illogical to me. For a number of reasons, battery ranges have improved a lot in recent years. The number of electric models with a range of at least 300 miles increased from 13 in 2021 to 51 in 2023, according to the U.S. Department of Energy. And a vast majority of electric vehicle owners are also homeowners. According to Wired, as of 2022, 88% of Tesla owners own their own homes and can charge their vehicles at home. The vast majority of EV owners, about 83%, according to a J.D. Power study, do most of their charging at home. Home chargers that can fully charge your EV overnight aren't that expensive, and they aren't hard to set up. Based on the fact that 67% of Americans, according to the Urban Institute, live in single-family dwellings, that leaves a lot of people who haven't bought an EV that will rarely, if ever, need to use a public charging station. Charging anxiety is caused largely by a failure to address this concern in EV marketing and by a concerted propaganda effort on the part of those who oppose mass EV adoption for reasons that are really unfathomable. And trust me, there are many people who oppose EV adoption for the dumbest reasons. Based on the most recent studies, the number of charging stations still lags behind psychologically what is needed to spur a wider scale adoption of electric vehicles. The entire country needs to set up about 2.5 times the current number of available public charging stations to reach that threshold. The good news is, based on current trends, charging infrastructure will be there pretty quickly. Part of the problem now is geographic disparity. The same study said nearly 30% of all the country's public charging infrastructure is actually in California, and that is the primary reason that market share of EVs is so much higher in California, even though more than 80% of EV owners simply charge at home. Now, many people are concerned with the last earnings report by Tesla, and a lot of that was justified by the numbers, but they dropped the ball on understanding what is happening with the market, and it didn't help that many less than scrupulous analysts jumped on the less than stellar results to report that EV demand was dying. Nothing could be further from the truth. Demand remains strong. I dropped the bottom line in this video earlier without making a big deal about it. Tesla only makes 5 models of vehicle that are essentially all in the sedan space, even though they want to call the Model Y and the Model X SUVs. There are now 40 plus electric and 50 plus plug-in hybrid model vehicles being sold in the US today. The consumer simply has a lot more choice than ever before. That demand is simply spread out, and the market is in transition. The Tesla early adoption market has largely been satisfied, and now everyone is competing for new customers on the basis of economics and branding. There are a lot of changes coming to the EV space. Legacy automakers are set to play a much larger role than in the past, and they are a threat to all of the smaller players, but I think Tesla has done the impossible, which is to start a successful car company in the US after 1925 that will actually last. I think that Toyota is the company to watch over the next 4 years. not necessarily because I think their stock is going through the roof, but because I think that their EV push is coming at the right time. Until recently, Toyota stayed above the EV fray and allowed everyone else to make mistakes so they can learn from them. Tesla made almost 8 times the profit per vehicle as Toyota for the third quarter, partly because of its ability to simplify production and reduce cost. Toyota shareholders noticed and demanded for Toyota to make some of their plans public, and finally got them talking. And boy did they talk. Beyond the huge announcement of new battery architecture for Toyota, they are pivoting hard on production changes. Toyota has made a technological breakthrough on the problem that has been plaguing solid-state batteries, which is durability. I've now read through some of the papers associated with that breakthrough, and I'm cautiously optimistic. On the manufacturing side, Toyota said that it was developing a dedicated EV platform to reduce the cost of new models and a heavily automated assembly line that would do away with the conveyor belt system that has defined auto production for the last 100 years. Toyota also said that it would use gigacasting to cut production costs, adopting an innovation pioneered by Tesla using massive aluminum casting machines to reduce vehicle complexity. The reason that this is important is because Toyota, over the last 40 years, has become one of the most conservative automakers, preferring to let others make all the mistakes and then swoop in with a superior product based on the same ideas. Despite the confusing messaging they have put out, stating that there isn't a single way for carbon-neutral transportation and their experiments with hydrogen vehicles and their improved ammonia engine, Toyota really represents the last auto producer to go all in on an electric future. Not because it's great for the environment, but because it is more profitable. Thanks for watching, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.